Hello and welcome back to the PuckLuck.com betting and fantasy team previews for the Calgary Flames. Now, you're probably the Calgary Flames like I did. They're a massive disappointment. A team that in the offseason seemingly made moves to win now at the expense of course, trading Matt Tkachuk to the Florida Panthers to acquire Jonathan Huberdeau, to acquire Mackenzie Weegar, to keep this team relevant now. They go out and sign Nazem Kadri because they lost Johnny Gaudreau for nothing in free agency. A lot of moves, a lot of bitter feelings maybe for fans to go into this season to try to still capture a playoff spot, and they really at 93 points maybe weren't as far as we remember. At least I remember this team. It felt like they were nowhere close at any point. 93 points is pretty decent, and maybe this Flames team is just being a bit undervalued going into next season. So why don't we get right into the bets? Get right into the whole thing. I have a couple things in mind that we're gonna get to at the end, but the projection of 97 points. Again, it felt when I read that, I'm like, that's pretty good. This might actually be bettable. I don't know, and we're going to get to what the sportsbook has here in a minute, but I think that's a little bit high. And as you see from our ceiling projection of 102 and our floor of 80, kind of leaving a lot more wiggle room down to the bottom, and not as much as a peak output. So yeah, it's a lot of, and there's a lot of ambiguity here. And I think that not only if you just take it what this team has now, which might not be the final iteration of what Flames have on opening night and have later in the season, but really really hard to find a cohesive top six, a clear power play one. Um, it's kind of a weird team. We're going to get to it, but I can't put my finger on this team. And at 97 points, they're projected on DraftKings Sportsbook for 95.5, which shocked me. I mean, it's not that much more than last year. Did they really add anything though? We'll get to that, but I don't think this team is all that much better in any capacity. There's no big move comes to mind, and while we're projecting them higher than that, it's by such a slim margin. I can't personally do it. Um, I don't think you need to pay into the VIG for what would be just an incredibly small edge, if an edge at all, which, again, in my opinion, I don't think it's really an edge at all. Are you really going to block up money on this team to make the playoffs in the Pacific with the Oilers and the Knights? I'm not. I can't imagine a scenario where you're going to be, oh, I gotta go lock them up to, win the division or make win the cup. Like, doesn't feel like an edge. None of this feels good to me. And I still think the Kings, Kraken, so good teams. It'd be hard to find the easy path for them in that division. When it gets to the player points, there's only one player point I could, his goals actually, for Elias Lindholm at 28.5. Elias Lindholm. That's the only thing I could find for a player prop for the season projection. I kind of like the under there, if anything, but I am like, this is not Sutter's team anymore. This is not going to be quite as boring of an offense. And maybe we find some of these younger players getting more time, some of the skilled younger players we're going to talk about. And maybe that'll add a little bit more of an element to a guy like Elias Lindholm. Maybe they can get Jonathan Huberdeau back a little bit on track. I mean, we were really low on him going into last year at the Morning Skate podcast, and we couldn't have been low enough. But, could these guys get back on track? New system, new young player, have a great undercall. I think it's probably fine, but something I'm going insane about. I think that's like the closest to and I really don't think there's anything else here that's going to be all that amazing. Now, the first thing you may notice on this is Dylan Dubé and Jacob Pelletier in the top six with, Lindholm, Mangiapane, Huberdeau, and Kadri, and you could really mix and match that up as best you want. The third line of Coleman, Backlund, and Sharangovich. So got kind of like a defensive third line. Top six feels a little clunky. How are they going to fit this in exactly? What's the exact unit going to be? Is it Pelletier? I'm a little bit higher on Matt Coronado myself. Really good finishing ability that would mix in well with the Jonathan Huberdeau. Top six roles, 4 players. Now, who it's going to be, I can't tell you for sure. Could they use a guy like Noah Hanifin to go acquire someone to help both of this top six? I think it's possible. The defense is good. The goaltending. Now you're seeing Jake Markstrom and Dan Vladar, who are both on the roster, And that was what they had last year. But Dustin Wolf is knocking at the door and I think very likely to steal a decent amount of starts. So all of this to say, from the entire video, I have one bet that I am placing. I have one favorite bet, and that is Jacob Markstrom under 29.5 wins. Vladar's still on this team. He was bad. He might not see a ton of starts, but Dustin Wolf will, I think. I think that, and just the combined three goalie system, which I think some teams are going to start, exploring a little bit more. I'm pretty confident that Jacob Markstrom would have to be very good to hit that 30 win mark, which the sports books are saying, that's the over under on him is to get the 30 or not. I mean, he'd have to win the majority of the starts. I just don't think he will, and I think Dustin Wolf will very quickly start to take over more and more of this net. And if they, do what I think Carolina's going to do, and we're going to talk about on the next video, and kind of put three goalies out there decently frequently, I really, really think that 29.5 is going to be a steal down the line. So that's going to be the one favorite bet for me. And finally, we're going to get to our media member quote. This comes from Ryan Pike at Ryan and Pike. He's over with Flames Nation. I'll tag all of it in the post. And he said, I think the model will probably underrate Oliver Shillington. Not the name I expected. I got to tell you, didn't expect it. He makes a good point, though. And his point is about how dynamic of a player, how mobile and gifted offensively Shillington is. Does get, forgot about, mainly because he just wasn't playing enough last year to really be remembered. And at times when he had a role, it seemed like, boy, this guy could. And you watch this guy, how was he not out there more? I mean, I think he got under the, the wrong side of it, and maybe he bounces back in. But this is really predicate on what Ryan says last, and that is the Hanifin being traded either before or during the season, giving him a bigger offensive opportunity to play with a Tanev or a Uyghur or however they want to suit it up. So Oliver Shillington is who he thinks to keep an eye on. Not really, I think, overly fantasy relevant yet, but it's someone definitely if Hanifin gets traded that will be a bigger role. So keep an eye on it. Everything here, like I said, there's one bet I think on this board that I'm taking, and that is Jacob Markstrom under 29.5 wins. Comment if you find anything. I have a very hard time finding a lot of player props right now, and we might just not get many. So definitely comment on the video, whatever, do all the stuff. I don't really care. But DM me even. Just let me know. Like, I found this one. What's the model say? I'll pull up any player that you want, and we will see you next for the Carolina Hurricanes.